DNA. Testing of a beautiful saint's mummy. Scientists were shocked by this discovery. Hello, and welcome to the Ancient History Channel. My friends, most of us have probably heard about the milestone of 1969, the year humans first set foot on the moon, opening a new era for science and space exploration. It was a moment that made the entire world recognize that the limits of humanity were no longer impossible to overcome. And yet, here's something quite fascinating. Even though science has advanced so far, we still cannot fully explain many mysteries right here on Earth. Just think about it. How can there be bodies buried underground for hundreds or even thousands of years that remain intact, despite never undergoing any form of mummification? Or those strangely shaped skulls that look as if they came from another world? And then there are ancient tombs that are thousands of years old, where each new discovery leaves archaeologists with more questions than answers. It may sound hard to believe, but all of these are real stories, documented and studied over many years. What's even more intriguing is that the more we learn, the more we realize that history is far more complex than what we were taught in textbooks. So what is truly buried beneath the layers of time? What were ancient civilizations really like? And how many mysteries are still lying in silence, waiting to be uncovered? If you're just as curious as I am, then this journey is definitely for you. So, are you ready to uncover the secrets of history with me? If you are, let's dive into our very first discovery right now. The skeleton of a vampire child, shackled in a grave for 400 years. You know, some fears don't come from what we see, but from what people believe to be real. And in Europe, hundreds of years ago, one of the greatest fears haunting people was vampires. It may sound like something out of a movie, but for people in the 17th century, this fear was very real. And it was that very fear that led to burial practices so strange that even modern archaeologists shudder when they uncover them. A clear example of this was discovered in a small village called Pien, near Ostrołęka in Poland. Researchers recently uncovered a very unusual set of remains. It was the skeleton of a child, about 5 to 7 years old, buried face down with its legs firmly shackled to the ground. Just think about it. Why would anyone do that to a child? According to researchers, this was not a random or impulsive act. It was part of a burial ritual meant to prevent the dead from returning. In other words, this child had been considered a vampire. That may sound hard to believe, but when you look at what else was found nearby, the story becomes even more disturbing. In the same cemetery, just a year earlier, the research team discovered another grave, this time belonging to a woman. Her big toe had been shackled, and a sharp sickle had been placed across her neck. The intention was clear. If the dead tried to rise, the sickle would immediately slice through her throat. Just hearing that alone shows how deep the fear ran back then, doesn't it? Professor Dariusz Polinsky, the archaeologist who led both excavations, stated that the two graves were only about 6.5 feet apart. This suggests that these were not isolated cases, but part of a larger, unusual burial ground. In fact, the site is believed to have been a temporary cemetery for those who were ostracized, people who were not allowed to be buried in official Christian graveyards. The reasons could vary: unusual behavior during life, physical differences caused by illness, or deaths under mysterious circumstances. You see, back then, being even slightly different was enough to make the entire community fear you. A terrifying time, wouldn't you agree? But it gets even more unsettling. As excavations continued, researchers discovered around 100 graves in the area. Many of them showed signs of anti-vampire measures. Some bodies had triangular metal restraints placed around their legs, while others were buried with heavy objects to keep them pinned down in the ground. All of it served one purpose: to ensure the dead could not return. Notably, near the child's grave, archaeologists also found several other remains, including that of a woman who was about 6 months pregnant. These discoveries suggest that the fear was not directed at just one individual, but had spread throughout the entire community. At that time, people were especially afraid of unbaptized children or those who had drowned. They believed these souls were more likely to become vampires, creatures that would return to prey on their loved ones first, then their neighbors, and eventually the entire village. It may sound superstitious today, but if you place yourself in that era, when science was underdeveloped and diseases were poorly understood, the fear becomes much easier to comprehend. Phenomena such as bodies decomposing slowly or appearing to move after burial may have convinced people that the dead could truly come back to life. And so, these bizarre burial rituals were born as a way to protect the living from an invisible terror. So if you had lived in that time, in a village where death wasn't the end, but potentially the beginning of something horrifying, what would you have done to protect yourself? As for me, honestly, even now, just thinking about it still sends chills down my spine, and I can't come up with any way to protect myself at all. The incorrupt body of a saint for 100 years. The shocking truth behind it. Throughout history, from ancient times to the present, humanity has witnessed many so-called incorrupt bodies, remains that have lain still for hundreds, even thousands of years without decaying. It sounds mysterious, but if you look deeper, most of these cases can be clearly explained by science. Some are preserved by freezing environments, others by sophisticated embalming techniques, or by natural conditions that accidentally freeze time. But among all these logical explanations, there is one story that has left even scientists stunned, that of Bernadette Soubirous. Bernadette was born into a poor tailor's family in southern France. From a young age, she was frail and frequently ill, especially suffering from asthma, which made life difficult. Then in 1858, at just 14 years old, something happened that would change her life forever, and perhaps history as well. While gathering firewood near the Gave River, Bernadette claimed she saw the Virgin Mary appear to her in a grotto. At first, no one believed her. After all, she was just a poor, sickly girl speaking of something sacred. It sounded more like imagination than reality. But what made the story extraordinary was that it didn't stop there. Over the next 5 months, Bernadette insisted she saw the Virgin Mary 17 more times. Rumors spread quickly, and crowds began gathering at the grotto. And where there are crowds, there is doubt, pressure, even threats from authorities. What would you have done in her place? Many people might have admitted it was all a lie just to find peace, but Bernadette did not. She remained steadfast in what she claimed to have seen, despite all the pressure. Then came the moment that changed everything. Following instructions from her visions, she dug into the ground with her bare hands and uncovered a spring. Strangely, the water from that spring was later believed to have healing properties for many people. From a story once doubted, Bernadette gradually became a symbol of faith. Her reputation spread so widely that even the Empress of France intervened to allow a church to be built at the site. Years later, Bernadette entered a convent at the age of 22, living a simple and devoted life. She passed away at 35 after years of illness. At that point, most would have thought her story had quietly come to an end, but it hadn't. More than 30 years after her death in 1913, Bernadette's grave was opened, and that was when everything became difficult to explain. Those present, including doctors, were astonished. Her body was almost completely intact. There was no smell of decay. Her skin was still soft. Her face retained a peaceful expression, as if she were simply asleep. Just imagine, a body buried underground for over 3 decades, under completely ordinary conditions, yet preserved like that. Does it sound reasonable? At the time, due to war, the examination process was interrupted. It wasn't until 1919 that her grave was reopened to complete the procedures, yet the results were nearly unchanged. Despite the passage of time, her body remained in a state that left anyone who saw it deeply unsettled. What's even more remarkable is this: Bernadette was never embalmed. No preservation techniques were used. The burial environment was not special in any way. Meanwhile, other bodies buried under similar conditions decomposed naturally. So what was really happening? If we look at other cases, science can usually provide answers. Bodies preserved in ice are essentially kept in a natural freezer. Ancient mummies were treated with herbs and chemicals to prevent decay. Even self-mummified monks underwent extreme processes to dry out their bodies before death. But Bernadette fits none of these categories. There is, of course, another fascinating exception: Xin Jui from China, an incredibly well-preserved mummy. However, her case is clearly explained by an elaborate preservation process involving multiple layers of fabric, chemicals, sealed coffins, and a specially controlled burial environment. Bernadette, on the other hand, had none of that. And that is why, even today, science has yet to provide a fully satisfactory explanation. Meanwhile, those with religious faith believe this is a miracle, a sign of divine grace granted to a pure soul. What's more, Bernadette is not the only case. History records many similar instances among saints. Individuals who lived simple, devoted lives, and after death, their bodies seemed to defy natural laws. So what is this really? An unexplained scientific phenomenon? Or something far beyond human understanding? Can you answer that? And if one day you were to witness such a body with your own eyes, undecayed, untouched by time, preserved for hundreds of years, what would you believe in? Science or a miracle? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Rare artifacts found in a 2,400-year-old tomb in China. You know, the ancient world is filled with countless mysteries and fascinating stories. Some tales may sound at first like nothing more than a simple case of tomb robbery, but the deeper you dig, the more they reveal secrets buried for thousands of years. And this next story begins in a very ordinary way, with a tomb robber. It all started in 2016 at a vast ancient burial complex in Xiangfen County, Shanxi Province, China. A thief quietly dug into the ground. There was no noise, no obvious trace. He simply made a small hole from one corner of the tomb, took a few artifacts, and disappeared as if he had never existed. At first glance, it seemed like just another case of artifact theft. But what he didn't realize was that his actions had unintentionally awakened a mystery that had been dormant for over 2,500 years. It wasn't until 2018 that archaeologists from the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences received information and arrived at the site. At first, they may have assumed it was just a routine case of site disturbance. But once they began their investigation and analysis, everything quickly exceeded expectations. Experts determined that the looted tomb was far from ordinary. It dated back to the late spring and autumn period, around 770 to 476 BC, meaning it was more than 2,500 years old. Its size was also remarkable, about 21.3 feet long, 17.7 feet wide, and nearly 33 feet deep underground. Just hearing those dimensions, you can tell this was no ordinary burial, right? But what truly made archaeologists uneasy was its location. The tomb was part of the Taosi archaeological site, a massive ancient cemetery in China containing around 10,000 graves of various sizes. A place where every inch of soil could reveal a piece of history. Fortunately, the thief had only scratched the surface of the treasure inside. He took some items, but many valuable artifacts remained undiscovered. And when archaeologists began a proper excavation, what they uncovered left everyone astonished. First, there were 16 ancient bronze bells with inscriptions. Over 2,000 years ago, these bells may have rung during solemn rituals or powerful ceremonial events. In addition, a large number of ancient weapons and jade artifacts were found, items that only the nobility could possess. One of the most remarkable discoveries was an exceptionally large bronze drum base. Hollow inside and used to support a drum, it measured about 32.7 inches in diameter. With that size, it has been identified as one of the largest drum bases ever found in China. By now, you can probably imagine the status of the tomb's owner. But that wasn't all. As archaeologists moved deeper into the center of the tomb, they discovered a decayed wooden coffin. Inside were the remains of a woman in her 30s. But what shocked everyone was that inside her abdomen, there were still traces of a fetus. That trace was a skull. The small skull was still clearly recognizable. After examination and analysis, experts estimated that the fetus was about 8 months old. A life that never had the chance to be born had remained buried alongside its mother for more than 2 millennia. Truly heartbreaking, isn't it? At this point, many of you might be wondering, just like I did, who was this woman? Based on the artifacts and inscriptions found in the tomb, archaeologists identified her as the wife of Shi Da Fu, a noble official during the spring and autumn period. This also explains why the tomb was so large and filled with such valuable treasures. However, the reason she died while still pregnant remains a mystery to this day, one that no one has yet been able to answer with certainty. Elongated skulls like aliens, a 1,000-year-old mystery that baffles archaeologists. There are some things that, at first glance, make you rub your eyes just to be sure they're real. The skulls discovered at the ancient cemetery of Submerged Egyptian in Hungary are one of those cases. At a glance, many people might think they're props from a science fiction movie. Long heads, high protruding foreheads, and strange shapes that don't resemble ordinary humans at all. But the remarkable thing is, they are completely real, and they have existed for more than 1,000 years. During excavations at this ancient burial site, archaeologists uncovered dozens of skeletons with clearly deformed skulls. These were not caused by accidents or disease. They were intentionally shaped by human hands. Hearing that, many people naturally wonder, why would anyone do something so unusual? To understand this, we have to go back to the 5th century AD. At that time, this region was part of the Roman Empire, known as Pannonia Valeria. However, this was also a period when the once powerful empire was gradually weakening, on the brink of collapse. Political instability, constant warfare, and waves of migration dramatically changed people's lives. In that context, a strange custom began to appear and spread across Central Europe: intentional cranial deformation. It may sound unsettling, but the process was actually quite systematic. From a very young age, when a child's skull was still soft, parents would use cloth, bands, or tools to tightly bind the head, forcing the skull to grow into an elongated, egg-like shape. This process lasted for years, until the head's shape was fully set. Just imagine, a child growing up with an unusually long head, looking completely different from those around them. What would that feel like? Of course, this was not a random or isolated act. Research shows that this practice was quite common in certain communities at the time. In other words, those strange skulls were not rare anomalies. They were part of a cultural tradition. So why did they do it? To this day, scientists still don't have a definitive answer. Several theories have been proposed. Some believe it was a sign of social status. The more distinctive the skull, the higher the individual's rank or power. Others suggest it was a way to express cultural identity, distinguishing different groups during a time of migration and upheaval. There are also theories that link it to spiritual beliefs or standards of beauty at the time. In a way, it's not so different from today. Some people get tattoos or cosmetic surgery. Back then, they reshaped the skull itself. It may seem strange, but when you think about it, people in every era have found their own ways to express identity and belief. Returning to the discoveries at Submerged Egyptian, what fascinates archaeologists is not just the shape of the skulls, but the historical context surrounding them. The 5th century marked the decline of the Roman Empire. Large-scale migrations from Asia and Eastern Europe flooded into Roman territories, bringing with them new cultures, customs, and unusual practices. It's very possible that this cultural blending gave rise to the alien-like skulls we see today. These skeletons, lying silently underground for over 1,000 years, tell more than just the story of a strange custom. They reflect an entire era of upheaval in human history. So if you had lived in that time, would you have accepted reshaping your skull just to fit into your community? Or would you have chosen to remain yourself, even if it meant being seen as different? The 500-year-old skeleton of a woman still with hair in China. You know, archaeology has always been fascinating in its own unique way. Some discoveries make people simply nod because they seem logical, but others make you pause for a few seconds and ask, how is that even possible? The story of a 500-year-old skeleton of a woman in China that still has intact hair is one of those cases. During an excavation in Jingzhou, Hubei Province, China, scientists discovered the remains of a woman who lived during the Ming dynasty, about half a millennium ago. But what makes this discovery extraordinary is not its age, it's the condition of the remains. As we all know, after a few hundred years, the human body typically decomposes almost completely, leaving behind only bones. Hair, skin, clothing are rarely preserved intact. Yet in this case, the woman's hair was still there, as if time had somehow forgotten to touch it. So what exactly allowed this body to be preserved so well? The answer begins with how she was buried. According to archaeologists, when she died, the woman was interred using a very special burial method. Her body was covered in a thick layer of lime. It may sound simple, but lime has the ability to absorb moisture and limit bacterial growth. This inadvertently created an environment that effectively locked the decomposition process. But that wasn't all. Her coffin was also sealed extremely carefully, using a special adhesive made from glutinous rice. This natural glue acted as an airtight barrier, preventing bacteria from entering from the outside. And there's more. At the bottom of the coffin, scientists also found various herbs along with jujube fruits. These items not only held spiritual significance in burial rituals, but may have also contributed to preserving the body. Some herbs have natural antibacterial properties, helping to slow down decomposition. All of these factors combined, the lime layer, the glutinous rice sealant, and the herbs, accidentally created an incredibly effective preservation technology 500 years ago. Isn't it fascinating that people in the past, without laboratories or modern equipment, were able, through experience and traditional beliefs, to develop methods that science today still studies carefully? Currently, the woman's remains have been transferred to a laboratory and are being preserved in a low-temperature environment. Her clothing has also been sealed in vacuum bags to prevent further damage. Every detail, no matter how small, is being carefully protected. Because they are not just physical objects, they are pieces of a story from the past. Scientists also believe this discovery is highly significant. Through the remains and the accompanying artifacts, they can gain deeper insights into burial customs, clothing styles, and daily life during the Ming dynasty in China. In other words, this is not just a set of remains, it is a time portal. From the preserved strands of hair, to the fabric of her clothing, to the herbs placed at the bottom of the coffin, everything is telling a story that history has never fully recorded. So if one day scientists are able to reconstruct her appearance, her life, or even the cause of her death, would you want to know how she lived? If you would, don't forget to follow the Ancient History channel so you won't miss the next mystery from the past. 10,000-year-old painting in the Amazon rainforest. Traces of a lost civilization. Have you ever wondered before the civilizations we know today emerged? Could humans have once built a world far more advanced than we imagine? Stories about prehistoric civilizations have long been debated. Some believe they are real, while others think they are nothing more than myths. Even Atlantis, the legendary land mentioned in the works of the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, has never been proven with solid evidence. And yet, deep in the Amazon rainforest, a recent discovery has made many people rethink everything. After more than half a century of conflict, Colombia finally reached a ceasefire agreement in 2016. That rare period of peace opened the door for scientists to enter regions that had previously been almost off-limits. A team of archaeologists from the UK and Colombia began an expedition deep into the Amazon, where nature remains largely untouched. And then, they found something no one expected. In the area of Serranía la Lindosa, massive rock paintings gradually revealed themselves along cliff faces. Not just one or two, but an entire system stretching for dozens of miles, featuring thousands of ancient images. In the Cerro Azul area alone, as many as 12 large panels and countless strange symbols have been discovered. What astonished archaeologists was not only the scale, but also the content of these paintings. They depict unusual animals such as giant sloths, horses, and camels, even creatures that went extinct long ago. Some images show scenes of hunting and daily life, but if you look closely, the proportions between humans and animals are extremely unusual. Some animals appear as large as a car. Doesn't that seem a bit off? But that's not all. On the rock walls, there are also mysterious figures, half human, half animal beings, and people wearing bird-like masks. These images raise an unsettling question. Are they merely imagination, or something the artists actually witnessed? What makes the mystery even deeper is the age of these paintings. They are estimated to be around 12,000 years old, dating back to the end of the Ice Age. At that time, much of the Earth was still covered in ice, but regions near the equator like the Amazon remained warm and humid, one of the few places where humans could live more stably. But here's the puzzling part. How have these paintings survived for tens of thousands of years on exposed rock surfaces without completely fading? The type of pigment used by ancient people remains a major question. So who created these artworks? Looking at the history of Central America, many might think of the Maya civilization, one of the most brilliant ancient cultures, emerging around 2000 BC and known for its cities, temples, writing system, and complex rituals. However, there's a problem. The Amazon paintings are nearly 8,000 years older than the Maya. Such a vast time gap makes any direct connection difficult to prove. What about Atlantis? According to legend, this civilization existed around 9,000 to 10,000 years ago and was located somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. At first glance, the timeline seems to match, doesn't it? But geographically, the Amazon is nearly half a world away from the supposed location of Atlantis. This makes the theory less convincing. In the end, archaeologists have proposed a more grounded explanation. The creators of these paintings were our own ancestors, humans of the species Homo sapiens, who lived and adapted to harsh environments tens of thousands of years ago. Even so, many questions remain. How are they able to create works on such a massive scale? What do those strange images really mean? And more importantly, are we underestimating the capabilities of prehistoric humans? It's hard to answer all of these questions with certainty. After all, the history we know may only be a very small part of the bigger picture, and perhaps, somewhere deep within dense forests or beneath thick layers of earth, countless secrets are still waiting to be uncovered. 150 skulls in a dark cave reveal a chilling ritual over 1,000 years old in Mexico. Have you ever imagined deep inside a pitch-black cave, far beneath the ground, filled with hundreds of human skulls? Just thinking about it is enough to send chills down your spine, right? But this is not fiction, it's a real discovery made in 2012 in Chiapas, Mexico, a place where ancient secrets still lie hidden, waiting to be uncovered. At first, when local authorities arrived at the scene, they were shocked. In front of them were around 150 human skulls scattered throughout the cave. It was a strange and terrifying sight, one that immediately made people think of a serious criminal case. Just put yourself in that situation, walking into a dark, lightless space and suddenly seeing skulls staring back at you. It definitely wouldn't feel comfortable, would it? However, the deeper the investigation went, the more surprising the truth became. Scientists later determined that these skulls were not connected to any modern crime. On the contrary, they date back over 1,000 years, specifically to the period between 900 and 1200 AD. This means these individuals died long ago, during a time when ancient cultures were still full of mysteries and complex rituals. According to research from Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History, most of the skulls belong to adult women, and notably, there were also 3 infants. One detail that particularly caught researchers' attention was that none of the skulls still had teeth. It may seem minor, but this detail led to a very important hypothesis. These skulls may be part of a tzompantli, also known as a skull rack, a ritual structure well known in ancient Mesoamerican cultures, especially among the Aztec. A tzompantli was not something simple. It was a wooden framework where the skulls of sacrificial victims were deliberately arranged or displayed. According to descriptions, the victims' heads were often pierced through the temples with wooden stakes and then hung in rows. Just imagining that scene is enough to leave a lasting impression. What's more, inside this cave, researchers also found traces of wooden stakes, clear evidence supporting the tzompantli hypothesis. For ancient Mesoamerican cultures, these sacrificial rituals were not merely acts of violence. They were expressions of religious belief, reverence for the gods, and sometimes a way to pray for good harvests, health, or protection. In that sense, tzompantli were not only terrifying, they were also symbols of a complex spiritual system. Even more striking, this is not the first time tzompantli have been found in the Chiapas region. Previously, caves such as Banquetas and Devil's Tapesco have revealed similar evidence. This suggests that such rituals were not isolated incidents, but may have been widespread in the region for a long time. Pretty unsettling, isn't it? 3,700-year-old ancient dagger discovered on a school playground. Recently, an 8-year-old girl accidentally discovered an ancient dagger estimated to be 3,700 years old while playing in her schoolyard in Vestland County, Western Norway. The girl, named Elise, was having what seemed like a normal day when she picked up a grayish-brown stone with a strange shape. No one could have imagined that the object in her hand was actually a prehistoric dagger, crafted around 3,700 years ago, dating back to the Stone Age, one of the earliest periods in human history. With the curiosity and innocence of a child, Elise showed the strange rock to her teacher. Fortunately, the teacher quickly realized that the object, measuring about 4.7 inches in length, was far from ordinary. It bore clear signs of human craftsmanship and an ancient style. The teacher immediately contacted archaeologists from the Vestland County Council to examine the artifact. When experts arrived and took a closer look, they confirmed that it was indeed a dagger from the late Stone Age, specifically from the Middle to late Neolithic period. This was a time when humans began shaping stone into tools, domesticating animals, farming crops, building permanent settlements, and developing early crafts. What makes this discovery especially significant is that daggers of this type are extremely rare. In many cases, they are associated with ritual burials or sacrificial practices. The appearance of such an object in the middle of a modern schoolyard has raised many important questions among archaeologists. Given the artifact's importance, the Vestland County Council quickly collaborated with the University Museum of Bergen, located in the city of Bergen, considered Norway's second-largest cultural center, to expand investigations in the surrounding area. However, as of now, no additional archaeological evidence has been found at the site, making the dagger even more mysterious and unique. Another aspect that has drawn significant attention from researchers is the material of the dagger. Analysis revealed that it was made of flint, a very hard sedimentary rock commonly used in prehistoric times for making weapons and tools. However, flint does not naturally occur in Norway. It is far more common in regions such as Denmark. This has led to the hypothesis that the dagger may have been brought from Denmark to Norway across the North Sea, either through ancient trade networks or possibly through natural movement of materials during the Ice Age. Of course, this is not the first time flint artifacts have been found in Norway. However, this discovery is particularly meaningful because it is closely tied to patterns of migration, trade, and cultural exchange among prehistoric peoples in Northern Europe. To better understand this, we need to look at the broader picture of the Stone Age in Norway, which lasted from around 10,000 BC to 1800 BC. During this time, the earliest inhabitants mainly lived along the coast, relying on hunting, fishing, and gathering in the forests. To survive, they used tools such as spears, axes, harpoons, bows and arrows, and fishing hooks, crafted from stone, animal bones, and wood. By around 2400 BC, some hunter-gatherer groups began to settle down and transition into agriculture, marking a major turning point in ancient society. That's why the fact that a child today could accidentally discover such a valuable relic from that era, in a modern setting like a schoolyard, is not just an interesting coincidence. It may also be a powerful reminder that the past is still waiting to be uncovered right beneath our feet. Hidden treasure beneath the coast of Egypt. What would you think if I told you that beneath the murky waters off the coast of Egypt, just a few miles from shore, there lies an entire ancient city, once one of the most prosperous of its time, now resting silently on the seabed? Hard to believe, right? But this is not a legend. It's a real discovery, revealed when a team of underwater archaeologists led by Frank Gaudio began exploring the mysterious ruins of Thonis Herakleion, a port city that once served as a vital gateway for trade in ancient Egypt. Diving deeper into Abukir Bay, the team uncovered findings that would send chills down anyone's spine. In the southern canal area of the city, they discovered massive stone blocks, the remains of a collapsed ancient temple. What's remarkable is that this structure wasn't destroyed by war. Instead, it is believed to have been swallowed by a catastrophic flood around the mid-2nd century BC. Can you imagine it? An enormous temple, submerged in an instant by the sheer force of nature. And this was no ordinary temple. It was dedicated to Amun, the supreme god in ancient Egyptian belief. According to tradition, pharaohs would come here upon ascending the throne to receive divine power, as a sacred ritual affirming their rule. Just picture it. Once, the most powerful rulers of their time walked these grounds, and now, all that remains are scattered ruins beneath the sea. It's a haunting thought, isn't it? But that's not all. What truly excited archaeologists were the artifacts uncovered at the site. Silver ritual objects, finely crafted gold jewelry, and even perfume bottles and ointment containers, though broken, still tell the story of a once thriving and devout civilization. It's as if the ruins themselves are whispering that this place was once a wealthy and sacred center. Interestingly, just east of the temple, the team also discovered a sanctuary dedicated to Aphrodite. Here, they found numerous bronze and ceramic artifacts, clearly indicating the presence of a Greek community that once lived and traded in the city. This shows that even thousands of years ago, this location was a vibrant hub of cultural exchange. Moreover, the discovery of Greek weapons revealed another fascinating detail. Greek mercenaries once guarded this area. They protected the entrance to the kingdom along the Canopic branch of the Nile, the most important waterway for ships at the time. And there's more. Beneath layers of mud and sand, archaeologists uncovered submerged structures supported by wooden pillars and beams dating back to the 5th century BC, and astonishingly, they remain almost perfectly preserved. It's as if time itself has been frozen beneath the sea. The ruins of this city were first discovered in 2000 by the European Institute for Underwater Archaeology, located about 4.3 miles off Egypt's coast. Before Alexander the Great founded the city of Alexandria in 331 BC, Thonis Heracleion was the largest port in Egypt on the Mediterranean Sea. But once again, nature proved its overwhelming power. Rising sea levels, repeated earthquakes, and soil liquefaction caused a vast area, about 42 square miles of the Nile Delta, to sink beneath the sea, and Thonis Heracleion could not escape that fate. It truly shows how terrifying the power of nature can be and why it's something we should never underestimate. 52 feet scroll, found inside a 2,000-year-old coffin in Egypt, in the heart of a scorching desert where towering pyramids have stood for thousands of years. A secret has just been awakened after more than 2 millennia of silence. This secret is not gold or treasure, but simply a scroll about 52 feet long, hidden inside an ancient coffin. The discovery was made at the vast burial site of Saqqara, located just south of the step pyramid of Djoser, the first step pyramid in Egyptian history. This area has long been known as a burial ground spanning multiple millennia, but even archaeologists likely didn't expect to find such a well-preserved map of the afterlife. The scroll contains excerpts from the Book of the Dead. Just hearing the name sounds mysterious, doesn't it? But for ancient Egyptians, this was not something frightening. On the contrary, it was more like a guidebook to help the soul safely navigate the afterlife. Think of it this way: if the journey after death is a long and challenging trip, then this scroll is the map, with detailed instructions. It includes spells, prayers, and guidance to help the soul avoid dangers, pass judgment by the gods, and ultimately find peace. What makes this discovery even more remarkable is its level of preservation. According to Mostafa Waziri, this is the first complete scroll found in Saqqara in over 100 years. That means for an entire century, no similar discovery has been recorded in this area. The coffin containing the scroll dates from around 712 BC to 332 BC, making it more than 2,000 years old. According to Zahi Hawass, information about the scroll's owner is still being studied and will be announced soon. A guide to the afterlife. Stretching 52 feet, pretty fascinating, right? But even that's not a record. According to researcher Foy Scalf, some versions of the Book of the Dead have been found measuring over 98 feet in length. This shows just how much effort and belief the ancient Egyptians invested in the journey after death. Looking back at Saqqara, this site is not only associated with Pharaoh Djoser's pyramid, but also served as a cemetery used continuously across many historical periods. That's why finding coffins, tombs, and artifacts from different eras is not surprising. Yet each new discovery feels like opening another untold chapter of history. In fact, this is not the first time such scrolls have been found here. In 2022, archaeologists also discovered a scroll about 13 feet long near the Pyramid of Teti. It even bore the name of its owner, a man called Pukhayef. Although he was buried near a royal pyramid, he actually lived centuries after that pharaoh. This suggests that burial near royal structures was once a common practice. So imagine this: if one day you found a guidebook for the afterlife, like this, would you dare to open it and read? As for me, honestly, I would probably leave it exactly as it is, just as it has remained for thousands of years. Because those ancient lines of text may not be just history, they might be whispers from a world that we, as modern humans, have never truly understood. The Bosnia Pyramid, the oldest pyramid in the world? When it comes to ancient wonders, you probably think of the pyramids of Giza in Egypt, a mysterious and magnificent symbol of an ancient civilization. But did you know there is another pyramid, far less known, that has been shaking the global scientific community? It's known as the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun, a structure hidden beneath layers of soil and vegetation in the town of Visoko. For many years, local residents believed it was just an ordinary hill, casually calling it Visoko Hill. It wasn't until 2005 that a surprising discovery revealed the truth. This hill appeared to be a pyramid-like structure, possibly built by an ancient civilization, perhaps even the oldest civilization humanity has ever known. Then, in 2012, two Italian archaeologists, Riccardo Brett and Niccolo Visconti, stunned the world when they discovered a piece of organic material deep within the pyramid structure. After radiocarbon analysis, the results suggested the material was about 25,000 years old. Just imagine, that's roughly 13,000 years before the rise of the Sumer and Babylon, civilizations long considered the cradle of human history. This finding doesn't just raise questions, It has the potential to completely overturn what we thought we knew about humanity's past. When the Bosnian pyramid was first discovered, researchers could only date the outer soil layer, which came in at around 12,000 years old. That alone was shocking. But the 25,000-year figure for material found inside pushes this mystery to an entirely different level. Could it be that an advanced, intelligent civilization once existed, perhaps even more advanced than we are today, only to be wiped out by an unrecorded catastrophe? However, like many groundbreaking discoveries, the Bosnian pyramid has also faced significant skepticism. Robert Schoch, a geologist from Boston University who spent 10 days studying the site, argues that it is simply a natural geological formation, not a man-made structure. Supporting this view, archaeologist Paul Heinrich from Louisiana State University stated that such landforms are quite common. In the United States, they are known as flatirons, iron-shaped geological formations frequently found in the western regions. This divide within the scientific community has made the Bosnian pyramid one of the greatest mysteries of the 21st century. Is it truly a remnant of a lost civilization, or simply a grand misunderstanding shaped by nature? We are still searching for the answer, but one thing is certain: the Bosnian pyramid has sparked curiosity, fueled the desire for discovery, and challenged everything we thought we knew about humanity's past. As you can see, the ancient world is filled with mysteries. Some have been buried for thousands of years and eventually found their answers, while others remain hidden in the shadows to this day, leaving archaeologists struggling to understand them. So among all the mysteries we've explored, which one do you think is the most puzzling? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to give ancient history a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our latest videos. And for now, goodbye, and see you next time.